G'day folks, welcome to this example of play from 1861. So in the introduction video I kind of gave a brief overview of what type of game this is. I showed you sort of midway through, it's right towards the end of that initial stock round, which is really part of setup. It's where the initial, what are called private companies are all auctioned off. Now, these private companies give you a regular revenue per turn, and they give you a bonus if you can connect to certain cities. The player who holds this Black Sea shipping company gets a bonus 10 rubles if they connect to Odessa, for example. I think there's 2 for Moscow and 1 for Poland off board here. So in addition to their basic revenue, they kind of give you an incentive to kind of want to build in this area, and that's just what the red play down here has done. I'm going to put these dice on the board to kind of show you where the players are. So we've got Woody off to the left, Reddy down here, and then Blue over here. Not to be confused with Blue Tweezers. This is Bluey, Reddy, and Woody. And they have different kind of objectives here. Woody is kind of taking the kind of northwest area. Reddy is taking the southern area. So Reddy took the Black Sea Shipping Company. They took the Odessa-Kiev Company, which starts down here in Odessa. And Bluey took the Moscow-Nizhny Novgorod Railroad. Now, what has happened here? Following on from the last video, Reddy felt that they were a bit of a disadvantage because these guys, I mean, Woody already has a rail link connected. Bluey over here could have easily built his connection to Novgorod, which he now has. I'll explain this in a moment. And he didn't have a connection. In fact, he had to build a station sort of tile first in Odessa and then connect here. So Reddy felt, so as not to get too far behind, he would purchase another minor company, and he bought the Riga Orel Railroad Company, which starts up here, up in Riga. Now, following that initial stock round, that's the last thing that happened after that video. I thought about it, I thought, yeah, he needs to auction that. There was a bit of tension, so Woody felt that maybe he should be buying that. This is kind of his sphere of influence, but he's running a bit low on cash. Bluey also thought this would be a good railroad with a kind of connection ready to go, but he's also didn't have as much cash. So basically, at the end of all that, Reddy had the most cash available and decided that he would pay for that. As it turns out, he got a bit of a bargain, paid 100 for it. The others just decided to save their cash. The biggest issue for me at this stage is how much cash should these guys be spending? They're trying to keep a bit of a reserve of at least 100 to 150 rubles because I don't know what's going to happen next. Yes, they'll be generating some income. They'll make some of that up, but I don't know what their kind of cash reserve should be like. So they're sitting out around 100 to 150 each following that final purchase. I will also point out that Reddy only bought one private company, so he had a bit of extra cash available. It was also a relatively cheap private company. This was, I think he paid around 45, 50 for it, compared to the Warsaw Vienna Company, where Woody paid close to 100 for it. So yeah, he had a lot of cash available. Incidentally, their resources are all just off board. You can kind of swing around. You can see Woody's resources over there. Reddy down the bottom here and Bluey just below the camera. I'm trying to give you sort of a panoramic view of the board, or at least cover the board and the details up the top, so you can see stock prices as well. So we've had the initial operating round. You have the stock round where you buy stock, then you have an operating round. The round marker is way up the top left, just in screen now, that little wooden cylinder. So you can see stock round OR1 is operating round 1, and then we're currently at the start of operating round 2. In operating round 1, you can see that the board has changed. We have some tracks being built. Each railway company operates in order of, I think it's from most highest stock price to lowest. So you basically go down from the this one here, the Nikolaev rail, and then from the top of the pile to the bottom with purple Riga Orel going last. Nikolaev, what did they do? They didn't do any rail building. They just bought a train. Now these phase 2 trains, they're called, little 2 star there. That tells us what phase of the game we're in. As we buy more and more trains, The cheapest available train will tell us what phase we're in. The cheapest available train right now is a phase 2 train. You can't see the other trains, they're just in a big pile up the top there. There's phase 3, which will be the next one available. Once we buy all these phase 2 trains, phase 3 will be available and we'll enter phase 3. And there are some subtle changes in the rules, which I won't cover right now. So during this first operating round, it was critical for Reddy down here to build his station tile. It was critical for him to also build this station tile in Riga. And it was critical for pretty much all the minor companies to buy trains. So if I can show you, for example, the Riga RL company, they did have 100 rubles in treasury. They spent that all on this phase 2 train. In addition to noting kind of what phase you're at based on what train is available, the sort of the size of the train, I guess, or the value of the train tells you how many station connections you can make. So at the very start of the game, you can only make 2 connections from one place to another. Every company has these phase 2 trains. They haven't bought all the phase 2 trains yet, so there's still some of those available. They've all spent pretty much most of their starting treasury on this train, and they'll now start to use these trains to generate income. So yeah, basically the first thing in the first operating round that all these companies do is buy a train. Now there's a certain order they have to follow in terms of there's a lot you can do on your turn during an operating round for these companies. They can redeem shares. This is buying back their shares from the bank pool. They go into the bank pool when they're sold by individuals. So let's say Bluey bought some shares in a company and then sold it to the bank. Reddy, who might control the company, can buy those shares back, and they're placed in the company holdings, and the company can make money from those shares. And of course, with that money they make in their treasury, they can buy more things, basically. All these companies need money in their treasury to do better things. Laying tracks, as far as I understand, is free. Sometimes it costs extra. So you see these R80, R20, that means it costs an extra 20 rubles or 80 rubles, 40 rubles to build through these areas. So what it means early in the game, for example, is that Reddy down here with the Odessa-Kiev rail, if he wants to build to Ekaterinoslav, modern day Dnepropetrovsk, they need to spend 80 rubles to build out there. They usually will build one track per operating round. So you can see they built one here, you can see up here, they've built one there. I mentioned Nikolaev didn't build anything. You'll notice there's 2 out here. That is because Bluey, in control of the Moscow-Nizhny Novgorod Railroad, opted to spend 20 rubles extra to build a second track. So you get one for free. If you wish to spend 20 rubles extra, you can build a second track for the turn. Now later in the game, you'll be able to upgrade these. Yellow is very basic. Later you'll be able to upgrade to green and brown and grey. You're allowed to upgrade 1 tile per turn and build 1 tile per turn. You can't upgrade 2 within the course of your turn. So to do that, they had to take a loan. Now, let me show you Bluey's little company over here. They're doing pretty well. They have bought, as you can see, they had 100 base operating treasury. They spent it all on a train, they had no money left. They wanted to build this second tile to ensure they're connected to Novgorod on the first turn so they can deliver to Novgorod on that first turn. They're going Moscow to Novgorod, hoping, not necessarily the first turn, the second operating round, but to do so, they needed to take a loan. So they've taken a loan of 50 rubles. Whenever you take a loan, you must immediately repay interest. So they've had to pay out 5 rubles, which gives them 45. They built the second tile for a cost of 20, and they're sitting now in a company treasury of 25. That's where they're placed right now. And they also have, I think I pointed out earlier, the Moscow Ryazan Railroad, which gives them plus 10 rubles for a delivery to Moscow. So they're in a good position. They've got, Bluey has set up quite nicely. I feel that Reddy has probably made a bit of a mistake down here in Kiev. They're trying to the plan was to get this southern area They could have built a second tile this turn, but they figure just wait until next turn, basically, then they can build this coming operating round. Basically, they'll take out a loan and build 2 tiles and connect to Kiev. So, tracks have been built, stations established. What else can you do with these mining companies? With public companies, the larger companies that will come out later, and they are all based just off to the right there. You can see the red Grand Russian Railroad, the yellow South Western Railroad, and so forth. They have various station markers. You can see they've got 4 station markers. One is actually 3. One indicates their stock price. So they'll be able to build multiple stations, and that's something that a company can do during their operating round. These minor companies, however, they only get the 1 station. So this is all they get, and they have to connect elsewhere. And as I say that, I'm wondering... Yeah, no, that's all good, all correct. Okay, so you start off by laying this yellow track. You can upgrade that track down the track. Excuse the pun, what's another word for down the track? In the future, you can upgrade the track to avoid the pun. You can place additional station markers, and then the exciting part is you run the trains. That's where you gain income. You calculate basically the stations you're going to. So from here, for example, red is Riga Orel Rail will run from Riga to Daugavpils and gain 30 plus 10 is 40. Geez, it's so reminiscent of Army Group North. I spoke a lot about Daugavpils in Army Group North. There it is. That's the rail line that those Germans were trying to use. Anyway, we're 80 years before that date. And we're looking into set of stations. So basically with their, let me bring this up and I'll show you this in small detail in a moment. With their level 2 train, they connect 2 stations from Riga to Daugavpils. They'll gain 40 income. A minor company, these ones, pay half to its owner, half to its treasury. A public company can make that decision. They can either keep, so these public companies, once they come out, they can either keep all their revenue, they can pay half their revenue and keep the rest in their treasury, or keep all, or pay it all out as dividends to their shareholders. So if you personally want to accumulate wealth, you can pay out a lot of, and you've got a lot of shares in that company, you can pay out dividends to yourself. If you want the company to prosper, you can keep the money. Often the decision you make there will affect the share price. Now, in the first operating round, you may notice that these little markers have moved. In the first operating round, these companies, so all these things have to happen in a certain order. And in the first round, you have to do certain things first. So you lay track, you place station markers, then you run the trains, then you pay dividends, then you buy trains. So they weren't allowed to buy all these trains until kind of the end of that operating round, which means that when they went to pay dividends, they earned nothing because they had no train, which meant that their stock price drops 1. It actually shifts, in this case, it shifts to the column to the left. So they've all been shifted out to this far, these 3 companies here have shifted to the far left. The Nikolaev has shifted 1 across to the left as well. So yes, not earning money, a company not earning money affects their share price. And that typically happens if they don't have a train or if they don't have a connection, as is the case down here. That'll be corrected this operating round. Operating round 1, they all buy trains. Operating round 2, they run those trains. Okay. Then after that happens, these companies pay interest, they can redeem their loans if they have the money available, they can purchase new trains, and that's the end of the operating round. So that's how things work. So let's get started and I'll demonstrate all this in practice. So as I said, operating round, let me go to the very start here. So every private company, every open minor company, started public company, and the Russian Railway operates once. The private companies, these little cards, they operate first by paying their incomes to their owners. So I'm just going to glance around. In fact, I can probably turn you can see these 2 private companies here. They bring in a revenue of 20 and 30. 50 for Woody. Woody's back up to 200. He's feeling pretty happy. way down below the board here, down south. Ready here with just the Black Sea Shipping Company gets a revenue of 15. He's not too impressed with that. He kind of lost out, I think, on that opening private company round. But there you go. And below the board, which it's really hard to get the camera to, we have Bluey with 35. And Bluey is now sitting on, he's got a lot of money now. I think he's sitting on 250 odd. So he's the most wealth. Bluey, of course, has this connection out here. So yeah, in my mind, it was helpful to kind of partition the spheres of influence. And then Reddy decided he would jump on that Riga railroad just to confuse me a little bit. Okay, so that's the private companies have paid out their revenue to their owners. The minor companies operate next in descending order of share price. This is where we go Nikolaev first. You'll notice I haven't spoken about the Russian State Railway. You may have seen that big pile of rail markers up in the top right, that grey board up there. That is the Russian State Railway. They function almost as an AI. The government building their state railway, and they have this sort of autonomous system. They automatically build stations in certain areas, Moscow and St. Petersburg in particular, and they can nationalise railways, which does happen. And that happens kind of later on in later phases, so I'm not going to talk about that or worry about it for now. So we don't have to worry about the Russian State Railway or their actions in these early turns. But you'll notice the important thing to keep in mind is that this area in St. Petersburg is reserved for, it says RSR there, that's reserved for the Russian State Railway. There's not a lot that Woody and the Nikolaev Railway wants to do, aside from running their trains. They've only got $10, so there's not a lot they can do feasibly anyway. So basically all they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, I'm going to take my level 2 train and we're going to run it between Moscow and Tver. Now I'm just sorry, a bit rusty here. Can I run that train all the way to St. Petersburg? Can I ignore a small... So let me explain the rules here for running trains. So if the company has a train, it runs them to establish their earnings. Each train runs on a separate route. So if they had 2 trains, they couldn't basically run them both along that route. Each route is effectively an individual train, a separate train on each route. So each route cannot share a track segment. The route may include no more stations or red off-board hexes than the number of the train, but must include at least 2. Thus, a 2 train must visit exactly 2. The value of the route is equal to the sum of the values of the stations or red off-board hexes it passes through. Skipped stations do not count. Okay, so it suggests that you can skip a station. The value of a station is the number printed in a small circle. The value of the off-red box is the number printed in the rectangle, the lowest in phase 2. So for example, for Poland, if I connect out to Poland, it's 30 in phase 2. In phase 3 and 4, it's worth 40, so it increases in value. Most of them increase in value, but in slightly different ways. So Romania increases, but only up to a 30, compared to Poland, which reaches a 70. The value of a station is printed in a small circle, the value of a red box, blah, blah, blah. The sum of the values of the routes run by its trains. Okay, so it does say that you can skip. It does say skipped stations do not count. Okay, so I'm inferring from that I can skip a station and run straight from Moscow to St. Petersburg, which I kind of want to do because it's worth 40 as opposed to 10. Once I upgrade to a level 3 train, I can add that 10 and stop at Tver. I'm just double checking the language here, making sure I haven't missed anything that says the route. Okay, so I think the route may include no more stations than the number of the trains. So technically this route does include more stations. So once I get to a level 3 train, it's the one area that I'm confused on. The route, you've got to pick a route, design a route, and it can include no more stations. Does that does that mean that I'm including Tver? I might pause and quickly check Board Game Geek. Okay, so I found a great website by Keith Thomason, which provides a contrast between all the different 18xx titles, and it clarifies that in 1861 and several other titles, you can skip these small stations on any route. And what that means is, even better news for Woody, he can skip Tver and go straight to St. Petersburg. That's not the case for all 18xx titles. There are very subtle differences among them. It seems there's only 3, as far as I can gather, only 3 titles in the 18xx series that let you skip these, and this is one of them. So, good news, they're going to go straight from Moscow to St. Petersburg. 40 plus 40 plus, of course, 10 gives the company a revenue of 90. Pretty impressive. That's 45 for the company, 45 for Woody. Now, of course, the 45 for Woody goes into his personal treasury, and we'll let him buy more companies. The 45 for the Nikolaev company will enable them to do more things. I don't know what they want to do right now. They don't really need... Well, they could buy another train. They could buy another train, in theory. Let me think this through. And run Moscow to Tver and another route from Tver to St. Petersburg. It gives them an extra, so it'll be 50 plus 50 plus 10 for the company. It's a little bit of extra income for the cost of a 100 train. They can't afford... Well, they could take a loan. They're sitting on 55 company treasury. So I've ran the trains now. I've paid dividends immediately afterwards. I don't have any loans, so I don't pay any loan interest or need to redeem any loans. Now I could purchase a train, and I've got to do something with this money. I think I'm going to do that. So I'm going to take out a loan. Here are the loan markers up here. Little red loans. They take 50 from the bank. They immediately pay back 5. Put that there above the company, and they'll take 45. So I'll combine that immediately with their 55. And look at that, perfect maths. They can just afford their second train. Woody and the Nikolaev, aka St. Petersburg, Moscow rail is rolling along. Geez, this game is full of puns, sorry. What that means is that in the next operating round, he can run 2 routes. 1, 2, for a combined income of 110. Only a small bonus above his current 90, but it'll pay back that train pretty soon. Well, is that a good long-term idea? I don't know, but we're going to do it anyway. Okay, and that's the end of the Nikolaev company. Oh, okay, so your stock price. How does this affect their stock price? If the stock price is okay, the share price is moved. Otherwise, its share price is moved 1 square to the right or 1 square up. If the current square, so it moves basically 1 square to the right. And mining companies may not go beyond that yellow bar. You can just kind of see at the top left, this is the kind of stock price indicator. It runs a fair way off the camera. And mining companies can't run past that yellow bar. So they're kind of limited to a maximum of about 165 rubles. That, I think, is the end of the activation of the Nikolaev company. We now go to the Moscow Nizhny Novgorod Railroad Company, the next marker on top here. And again, they have their train. This is Bluey down here running his train. He has got Moscow for 40, Novgorod for 30. He, of course, has plus the Moscow region Railway for a plus 10. That gives him an income of 80 for that company. That's pretty straightforward. That's 40 for the company treasury. And 40 for Bluey's personal bank account. So they have a loan, and they don't need another train because they're running a very direct route to Novgorod. They may certainly look to build further to Kazan. In fact, my apologies. Let's do that. I should have done that first. So lay track. Should have built the track first. So we're going to expand this track. And yeah, I think we're going to go out from Novgorod towards Kazan. It's it's going to have an income of 30 because it's a city. It's not a major city as these are. It's still a city, a station. They have a treasury at present of 60. Oh, you know what? No, because they have to pay for it before. So I'll hold there for now. Next turn, though, they will connect to next operating round. They'll be able to connect to Kazan. So that's their route. Pretty straightforward. They now, of course, have to pay their interest. This is off camera to the south, but they've got a loan, 5 rubles, to the bank, and yep, they made money. So their share price increases. They shift 1 to the right. Which brings us to the Odessa-Kiev, the bad decision railway. Same idea again. They are going to lay track, and they're going to go 1. And I think, yes, they are going to take a loan. I almost took that loan from Nikolaev. They're going to take a loan, take 50 rubles, immediately repay the interest of 5. Pay an extra 20 I'm flicking through. Sorry if you can hear the sound of plastic. I've got all the tiles in the bag at the moment. I should get them out on the board. Pay an extra 20 from that 45 to build a second track, which gives them 50 minus 5 minus 20, 25. Into their treasury. So this is what that company looks like at the moment. Okay, so loans, yeah, we've done lay upgrade track, place a station marker, no, run trains. Okay, so they take their train and yay, they're running from Odessa to Kiev. Why is that important for Ready? Because they have the Black Sea Shipping Company. What does that mean? Okay, so they get 30 plus 30 plus 10 is 70. Oops, that doesn't go there. That goes there. That's a private company owned by Ready. So 70 split, half is 35 each. Again, 35 for the company. They now have a treasury of 55. Okay, so they've repaid their loan for. Excuse the pens there bumping around. They've paid their loan for this term. When you take a loan, you immediately pay 5 rubles interest. That's your interest for this turn. You don't then pay interest again later in the turn. They ran their train. They made money. Their stock price goes up. They could buy another train. They don't want to. Now, the only other option here for Odessa Kiev is to expand towards, the only other kind of obvious option here is to expand up here, and that's the plan. And it's expensive though. And it's going to cost, next turn at least 40 rubles there, 40 rubles there, a 30 city, then they can think about a second train. Or we don't worry too much about that expensive route and just focus on Odessa Kiev for now, which may be more prudent. So they're not going to buy a train. They're happy. They'll stay there. Finally, we have the Riga Railroad here. Do they want to lay any tracks? You know what? I think they kind of do. They're going to build down towards Vilnius. Which, of course, I can't help thinking about. It's right on the border of Army Group Centre and Army Group South. So they're building this track here. I could build here towards Smolensk. It's a 30 city. This will be a 10 town. This is kind of immediate short term. What to do? Maybe I should build out here. This is an extra. If I build out here now, the next turn I can connect to Smolensk. Alright, so if I can continue down through here, next turn I can build 2 tracks. Okay, so I've laid the yellow track for that company. I'm not placing a station marker, but I'm running my train. So where are we? Here we are. Now, if they can incidentally hook around, I don't know, is that even feasible long term? Connect with the Black Sea Shipping Company via a long-term delivery to Odessa. Maybe in the long term, around phase 6, 7, maybe. Running the train, just very short here, 30 plus 10, 40 income, that's 20 for the company, 20 for Ready. Which is good, because that gives the company a treasury of exactly 20, which is exactly what they need to build a second tile to Smolensk next turn. Which means that next turn they could run Riga Smolensk for 60 income instead of 40. And they'll begin to weigh up the decision to purchase a second train or not. Again, I don't think it's probably worth it, but it's a consideration. They made money, so their share price goes up. That is now, so from that, as I said, that's the mining company's done. From there, we go to public companies. And as I said, there aren't any public companies until later in the game. All companies have operated. Now again, once that operating round is complete, the next thing we do is run the Russian State Railway. So on the first turn, phase 2, that doesn't happen yet. We have to wait basically for 3 or 4 more phase 2 trains to sell before that happens. There are, incidentally, still some good, way on the right, some good minor companies. You can see them out there, available for purchase. That'll help. There's the 3 players have gained some income now. They're probably more comfortable investing in those. I'm learning a bit about income and how much they're actually getting back from these companies. So we'll probably see them in the next stock round buying more of those minor companies, and the yellow rail network will rapidly expand. In fact, we may see a competitor pop up in Smolensk and run a route to. We'll see what happens here. There's Kharkov, of course. There's 2 minor companies available in Kiev. This is a great one in Moscow, connecting to Voronezh. There's Samara as well. So a company could buy in Samara, you see that here, connect to Kazan, and linked with the Moscow Nizhny Novgorod Railway. And kind of, there's a lot of possibilities in this game. There's a few companies down here as well. I don't know if they're all out. So I will point out that the yellow companies, that's the key. The yellow companies with a yellow shield background. I've just realised they have a yellow shield in their background. These are the ones available from the start of the game. Samara, Tsaritsyn, Rostov. You can see they've got a green shielded background. They're not available until a later phase. I don't know what phase. I'm trying to look through. There's a great phase summary. So here's the phase summary in the rulebook. You can see phase 2 trains. These are the rules. Yellow track is available. Track may not be built on private company hexes. What does that mean? These are private company hexes. This is why yellow has weaves through here, because they can't build here and they can't build here. Red off-board hexes count the lowest value. There's no connection off there yet. Minor companies may own no more than 2 trains. So yeah, just to reiterate, Nikolaev, I'll bring this onto the board again to show you. They're at their train limit now. They have 2 level 2 trains. They're at their limit until in fact, that's it. It gets worse for them. By phase 4, minor companies can only own 1 train and public companies begin to take over. But folks, that is pretty much the end of the first term. We've had a stock round, initial operating round where these companies laid some track, bought trains, and this is the first operating. Then we have the second operating round, the first in which these companies all run their trains, generate income, and begin to think broadly about their plans. Technically, and if I zoom up the camera again, you can see on that track there's a little M. It's really hard to see, sorry. After the operating round marker, it shows a merger round. That happens during phases 3 to 7. And it's where minor companies can elect to converge or merge to form public companies. Don't need to worry about that right now. So yeah, the way this game 1861 is structured, the rules are very clear for the most part. That minor company, minor thing was a little ambiguous. I wasn't sure. Other than that, it's a great way to ease you. The phases are a great way to ease you into the game. Operating round 1, you don't have a train, you don't have to worry, you just build some track. Operating round 2, after you've bought a train, you make your first short delivery. Operating round, next one, we'll have more stock, more companies coming out, more things to do, bigger decisions to make, and more money around the table. Folks, I hope that's given you a bit of an insight into the early stages of this 1861 or 18XX style of game. There'll be more to come. Stay tuned and take care.